It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but Georgia absolutely thrashed Kentucky. And this was definitely a possibility when we came into this game. We just weren't really sure what we were going to get from Georgia. I don't think there were many that thought Georgia would lose this game. There was a possibility that they potentially could lose it, but you didn't really think seriously that Georgia would lose. And we saw exactly why that was. Now, I will say Kentucky started off the first drive pretty strong. You saw good rushes from Ray Davis. The offensive line was creating holes. There was good play calling by Liam Cohen. There was a lot of things they were doing well. The only thing is that they couldn't find a passing attack, whether it was drops, whether it was receivers not getting any separation, or Devin Leary simply missing wide open guys. The passing game never got a foundation to build upon, and you saw what the result was going forward. And honestly, Georgia didn't need much help to win this game, but Kentucky gave them plenty of it. And that says a lot about where both of these programs are. And it's not necessarily that Kentucky is a bad program, because I really like what Mark Stoops is doing with Kentucky. I think that they are a solid team. It's just you have to get a different level when you're playing Georgia. Georgia is still one of the best teams in college football, and you have to find a way to play at a different level. And Kentucky just didn't have it. The secondary got gashed, even just in the first half by Carson Beck. I thought Carson Beck looked very good, very confident, made a lot of correct reads, made a lot of decisive throws, and the result obviously shows. You saw what he was capable of doing. We knew that with his talent. You knew that he was capable of doing something like this, but 389 yards, four touchdowns. The one pick to start the second half obviously wasn't great, but it gives you something to continue working on. And this Georgia team just it's so fun to watch when Georgia is playing at its best. When Georgia is playing really well, there's not much that other teams can do. They held Kentucky to just 55 yards rushing after having a monster week against Florida the week before. Georgia just basically took away that rushing attack, and then it was on Devin Leary to try and throw the ball, and it just, like I said, it never got going for Kentucky. And it started when they had momentum, when they had a lot of success. They still couldn't complete passes. And you saw it. Devin Leary, 10 of 26, not going to get the job done. The one thing that is really interesting is how much Georgia is using Brock Bowers. Now, yes, Brock Bowers is an extremely talented player, but the one concern I have is what is anybody else doing? There are a couple guys that I think stand out, but can you get other players involved? I should say that's what we had coming into this week. Ra Thomas had that huge, incredible touchdown reception. That was huge. I think that Marcus Rosenby Jackson was good for them too. There are players that stepped up. Rushing attack was a committee approach just because they're having so much success, and at the end, you just it didn't really matter who was getting the ball. But that's kind of what Georgia is. You don't necessarily need someone to be a focal point. Right now, it is Brock Bowers, and Kentucky struggled mightily slowing him down. You saw Brock Bowers as a menace, whether he was in route running, Kentucky couldn't guard him, and then tackling him. The first tackler was never the successful one. Brock Bowers was able to shed off a lot of, pick up a lot of yards after contact, and that's really exciting. It shows them, other teams, I should say, who they have to focus on, but it also gives opportunities for other guys to step up. And right now, we're kind of just waiting for that second option to emerge, whether it's the rushing attack, whether it's another wide receiver. Someone will have to step up eventually, and that will help them tremendously because Georgia can be a good unit overall. They don't necessarily have to rely on one person, but you want to have a reliable target. Right now it's Bowers, but you'd like to see more and more people step up. And maybe it's just going to be this absolute domination every single week. But I think it's really exciting to see Georgia playing at this level. We wondered when we would see this, and today was the day. We saw a Kentucky team that was overwhelmed and overmatched throughout the entire game, and Georgia put up 51 points on them. It was pretty easy for Georgia to get to this point, and it was just a matter of when we were going to see it. They hadn't covered the spread up until this week, and now you have an exciting win for Georgia. You have high expectations for the Georgia Bulldogs going forward, and that's even higher than what they were. They were high before, but now you have an even higher ceiling to go and try and reach. Now, your next week's not going to be really much of a worry, but Kirby Smart will find a way to motivate his team against Vanderbilt. Then you have Florida, and Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee. You have a, I don't want to call it a gauntlet, but you have some really tough games coming up. You have a rivalry game next, obviously, and then Missouri, Ole Miss, and Tennessee is a tough 3 game stretch. Those are teams that are playing very well right now, and if they continue playing that way, they're just definitely going to have their hands full. So you need to play at this level week in and week out, because if you don't, then you're in trouble. And Georgia right now is playing how they need to play. They handled Kentucky, they took care of business, and now you have a lot of exciting things to look forward to for the rest of this season.